Hello everyone, I'm Denison Bertrand from DappHero, and I'm just going to walk you through really quickly a new tutorial template that we have available for you for Webflow. It's called Public Message, and what it is this Webflow template allows you to create a message that you send and store on the blockchain, and then it can be read from the blockchain. So the idea is, think of sort of like a public bulletin board. This tutorial is on the Kovan test network of Ethereum, so you will need some Kovan test ETH to be able to post a message, although it's free to read a message. We will probably add a link in the template to give you direction where you can get some Kovan test ETH. And if you're interested, we'll be able to make this contract available on other networks. So if you have Rinkeby, for example, you could do this on Rinkeby. Anyway, to show you currently, the current message is hello Webflow. This is the function, the Solidity function method that is being called in this sort of div area here. And down here, we can create a message. So I'm going to create a message really quickly, and it's going to say hello London, because I am in London right now for ETH London. So I'll click submit right there. We're going to have that confirm, and then we see down here our transaction has started. And now that it is confirmed, it's succeeded, we'll wait a second and the new message should pop up here. Hello London, right? So that's coming directly from the blockchain. So let's jump over to Webflow and see how this is working. So this is the Webflow project. You can find it in well, I assume you're already there because this is playing on the Webflow website. But if you were to clone it from the Webflow template repository, which there'll be a link to that, this is where you would show. This is where you arrive, all right? So this is the starting point. So what we have here is we have a number of different containers, which are just holding our different stuff. So we have a container for our current message. We have a container for creating a message, right? And each one of these things here, these are forms. Well, this isn't a form, sorry, but this is a form, right? So you have a form here, and then you have the field label, right? And we built this really from these components over here, the pre-built layouts, right? So we built that from our contact form is what we used to build that out. But of course, you could just build this from scratch if you wanted. Anyway, let's go through how this is actually working. Again, the first most important thing is you have a connection button, which allows us to connect to the user's MetaMask. And if you take a look at that, we click on it, we go over here to the little gear button, and now we look at the custom attributes. So again, we have data DH feature, and that's network because the connection button is from the network feature. And then data DH property enable true. So that means this button is now going to be our enable button. So let's take a look quickly at our smart contract. This smart contract, again, is deployed on Kovan. We have it verified here on Etherscan, so you can take a look at it. You can also interact with it directly from the contract here if you wanted to. There's only one public function here, public method, I should say, hello London, right? And you could also write the contract too if you want to do directly here. So if we look at the code, it's quite simple. We have a copy of the code here in the template for you to take a look at. Very simple contract. If you were to actually deploy this, you would probably want to go with this full code here, the contract source code. So we just have this is a truncated version for just the tutorial. So you see here we have a public view function, which is a retrieve, and method, public view method. Sort of confuse those two things, but they're one and the same, but there's a slight difference. So this public view method is for retrieving the value of the string message, and store is for setting the value of this string message, right? So let's dig into it. So the current message we're going to show here, but we've left these div blocks, this div block and this div block, viewable because these are actually our method instances, right? And this div block and this div block, because we have two different methods, right? We're reading from the blockchain here and we're writing to the blockchain here, right? Using two separate methods. And here it's going to be retrieve and here it's going to be store. We have to create two method instances. So we've left these div blocks available so you can see, but typically in your design, you would actually choose this button over here once you created this div block. And again, you can put the attributes on anything generally. We put them on div blocks to be clear, but in this case with this div block, we would normally just hide it after so that we don't have it come up in our layout. It doesn't affect our layout, but we clearly have a div block that is responsible for creating a DappHero method instance. So clicking on this, let's go over here to the gear icon to take a look at our custom attributes, right? And if you've read the documentation, you know that we are doing a custom contract here. So data DH feature custom contract. We have a property on this custom contract, which is our contract name. And our contract in this case is called public message. And where we find that is if we go over into our admin for DappHero, let that load up. So if we go in and if we take a look at this project, and this is my project here, this script tag is included in the tutorial and you're free to use it. You won't be able to add other smart contracts to it because this is my project, but this is what you would do if you were to add your own smart contract to your own project. But we have public message, and what we do is that's the name of our smart contract. This is our contract address on the Kovan network, and this is the ABI. So we're not going to change anything here, that's fine. In your case, if you were going to be doing this tutorial from scratch, you would actually do add custom contract and you would start and you would add all that data yourself. So going back over to Webflow. So data DH property contract name is public message. Then we have the method name, so that's data DH property method name, and that's retrieve. That matches this method here, retrieve. Then we create a method ID for it, right? And in this case, we're going to give it 000. And this method ID is going to link this heading up here to this method ID. That way, the DappHero engine knows that this is where we want to put the information that's coming back from this method. And then we have data DH property auto invoke. True. And what that means is this is going to auto invoke as soon as the page is loaded, and it'll also regularly check the blockchain to see if something's changed. So that's how you saw it updated itself. If we didn't have auto invoke, we would need to put a button in there to have it go and fetch the data from the blockchain. But in this case, for public view methods, you can use auto invoke and it'll load at page load and it'll keep it updated with the current state of the blockchain. So now remember, our method ID is 000. So up here, where we want to put our current message, this is an H1 heading. What we do is now we tag this with custom attributes. So in this case, it's data DH property method ID 000, and that's linking this heading, the text, the content of this heading, to this instance, method instance in the div block. So that's method ID 000. And in this case, we're doing data DH property outputs true. Because only one thing is coming back, and this is a string, we can just say, hey, this is the outputs. Just put everything that comes back from here, and it's true. You could choose named outputs for a different contract, but in this case, it's enough to just use data DH property outputs true. So that's how we get that piece of information from the blockchain. So a little bit more complicated is sending a transaction to the blockchain, which changes state to save a message, right? So in this case, now we have a form here and a submit button and a transaction hash. So each of these three things is going to be linked to the method instance that we're going to create down here on this div block, right? And we're going to link them using the method ID. So we're going to have a message. So this is going to be the input field. This is what's going to go here in this message field in the function store. The submit button is what's going to trigger a transaction that the user can agree to. And this is where the transaction hash, the resulting transaction hash of the transaction will go. So we start with creating our method instance. So if we go back over here to the gear icon, we can take a look. It's data DH feature, custom contract, because we're dealing with custom contract. And then we have data DH property, contract name, public message. So again, this contract is called public message, which is what we have it listed as inside our project here. And then we have our method name is store, which lines up with this Solidity function store. That's our method name. And then our method ID here is 001, right? So we need to make sure that that's different than the method ID for up here. Otherwise, it's not going to work, and we won't know why it works. So why it doesn't work, right? So it's very important to be very careful not to make any typos, because you'll create hard to diagnose problems. So now that we have that method instance created and our method ID is 001, we just need to label and link these other elements together. So this is going to be our input, and this is a form that's created over here in Webflow. This is a form block. One of the things is with Webflow, forms natively have HTML5 behavior. DappHero core, the engine, will override that so that we can use it for interacting with the blockchain. So in this case, we don't need any of these things. Well, here we use name it the message and put a placeholder, which is pretty convenient. But now the custom attributes. Our custom attributes here are data DH property method ID 001. That's linking it to this method instance below the div. And then the data DH property input name underscore message, right? And what that's saying is, hey, this is an input for this method on this function, and the value is message, which is the name of this argument right here, message, right? So this argument, message, has to be the same as this input name. That's how the DappHero engine knows that, okay, the value, whatever somebody has typed into this input, is going to be sent to the blockchain into this method, into this function, as this argument message. Then we have the submit button, and what the submit button is going to do is going to trigger that transaction on the blockchain. So you have the data DH property method ID, again, 001, so that we link it to this method instance. And then we have data DH property invoke true. And that just means when somebody clicks this, we're invoking the transaction. And because it's a transaction, keep note, you cannot auto invoke. You can only auto invoke public view functions, methods, because they do not change the state of the blockchain. Anything that creates a transaction can only be invoked manually by the user with a button. And finally, we have the transaction hash. So transactions do not return data like public view methods do, but they do return transaction hashes, which you can use to locate your transaction in a block explorer, right? And that's sort of the receipt that your transaction was made. So we have a heading here, but if you notice, we have a little text span right here. And this text span is where we're going to put that transaction hash. And so we do our method ID, data DH property method ID 001. And then we do data DH property outputs true. So it's very similar like before. That's because the transaction receipt, this hash, is returned to us. And we don't have to name it, so we just say it's the outputs. And that's all you need to do. So it's just about labeling these things. And then when you go over to the website, you would click publish up here. And you come over here, and then it just automatically works, right? So you can just jump right into experimenting with how to save data and read data from the Ethereum blockchain using DappHero with this Webflow template. There's a little bit more information here, some links. I'm going to add this video to the template itself, so you'll be able to clone the template to your Webflow account, and then you'll be able to watch the video and learn how it works directly there. As a note, the icons up here are from Icons 8, these two icons. So just giving them some credit out there. And so feel free to play around with this. Maybe you can use it as a basis of your next hackathon project, or just learning how to use DappHero and interact with the blockchain. As a final note, I didn't cover this a little bit earlier, although I should have. If you want to understand why DappHero is working in here, well, if you've read the documentation, you'll note that down here we have our script tag. Probably should have talked about that a little bit earlier, but our script tag is down here. So This is how this tutorial works. Please play around with it. Use this as a starting point for your next project. And we'll be creating a glitch version of this soon as well. But for now, you can start with the Webflow. Thank you and goodbye.